Despite these warnings, students say this will not stop them from getting a tattoo. It will only push them to make educated choices. He also says ownership of businesses like Guavate, a well-known restaurant, are growing the Puerto Rican influence in Central Florida. The Brennan Center for Justice study shows 11% of Americans do not have a government-issued ID, like a driver's license, passport, military ID, or a state ID. Welcome, UCF Knights, to your nightly news update for Thursday, October 25th, 2012. I'm Krizia Cruz, and let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on in our community. Welcome, UCF Knights, to your nightly news update for Tuesday, October 23rd, 2012. I'm Krizia Cruz, and let's take a look at what's going on in our community. I'm Krizia Cruz. Today is Friday, October 26th. Thank you for that report, Chris. Well, this week, the UCF Board of Trustees met to discuss a possible raise for UCF President John Hitt. Currently, the Center for Disease Control reports 323 cases of people infected by the steroid linked to meningitis. CDC shows Florida is tied with Indiana as the third state for meningitis deaths, now with 3 deaths and 19 cases. We also told you about the West Nile virus infections when the recorded cases hit over 2,500 nationwide. Now, the CDC reports the nationwide cases are at 4,725. And in Florida, the CDC reports there are now 57 cases and 2 deaths. The University of Central Florida is teaming up with Feeding Children Everywhere, a nonprofit organization, to hand-pack 250,000 meals. If you don't do your research before getting a tattoo, you might be in for more than what you paid for. The Food and Drug Administration and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention put out warnings to alert consumers about possible ink-related skin infections. FDA officials are mostly concerned about a family of bacteria called non-tuberculous mycobacteria, which usually grows in water and soil. Back in 2011, dozens of cases were reported in several states across the country. But after investigating, health officials say the first outbreak in New York stemmed from a problem with pre-packed ink and not a lack of hygiene at the shop. Licensed Central Florida tattoo artist Oscar Gomez agrees this issue is more of an ink manufacturer's mistake.
It's just a skin infection that was caused by non-sterile water used by the manufacturer.
The CDC report explains the contamination may occur when the ink is being made as a result of using non-sterile ingredients and poor handling procedures. Despite these warnings, students say this will not stop them from getting a tattoo. It will only push them to make educated choices.
It may influence my choice as to where I go and possibly do a little bit more research on the potential ink or ask more questions.
Gomez urges those who are thinking of getting a tattoo to inform themselves before taking that step. In Orlando, Krizia Cruz, UCF Nightly News. All voters must show proof of who they are at the voting polls, whether with a license or state ID. But this election, fewer young minority voters may not be allowed to cast their vote. Since the 2008 elections, dozens of states passed voter identification laws requiring all voters to have a government-issued ID. A Brennan Center for Justice study shows minority votes are expected to drop drastically in 2012. Researchers at the University of Chicago and Washington University discovered nearly 1 million Latinos, African, Native, and Asian Americans will not get to vote. The voters range between the ages of 18 and 29. In Florida, close to 100,000 young minority voters may not get the chance to vote because they don't have proper identification. Dornita Rogers, community organizer at Focus Orlando, advises those without an ID to go out and get one before the elections.
I would purchase a Florida identification or as soon as possible, go ahead and start working on the provisional ballot process.
The Brennan Center for Justice study shows 11% of Americans do not have a government-issued ID, like a driver's license, passport, military ID, or a state ID. Students at the University of Central Florida think this will impact who wins the elections.
Without the minority voice, we will not be able to have that specific opinion in our country, and that will definitely affect what will be the outcome.
In Orlando, Krizia Cruz, UCF Nightly News.